Good morning, it's Martin Godfrey Legido here at Acquisition Assist. And we help individuals and SME business people to expand massively by acquisition of other businesses. So my background, PwC, chartered accountant with a law degree. So I just wanted to talk today about comparing buying a business already operating and starting one from scratch. So I've done both, including a sellout some time ago in the drinks industry, resulting in an eight-figure profit from that. So as far as I'm concerned, real estate is a great asset. Business is a second asset. I wouldn't know where to start with crypto, for example, and obviously things like stock investing and so on. My book, which I wrote some years ago before AI was even thought of in 2018, goes through the different sorts of classes of assets to invest in. But back to the main dish today and starting a business. What's good about that? You would normally um, start a business in a sector where you know that there is a demand. It could be a fairly basic thing. I don't know, starting a fleet of taxis or a taxi service. It could be something much more complex. So, like in biosciences and so on in Cambridge. So, starting a business has its place. There's no question about it. New things come out all of the time. And I think AI is actually generating a lot more possibility to start new things. Jeff Bezos was talking about this recently, which I found rather interesting. Um, so you're starting from scratch. Now, people say it can cost a lot of money to do that. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Um, it can actually be quite economical. You can start something small and gradually build it up as you attract investors. Really need to reach out and get yourself surrounded by people who really know what they're doing in the sector, and then build it step by step. What I really must say is that it's painful. I've got the scars on my back. Um, it it's tough, especially if you don't know what you're doing. When I started my first business, I really was naive. I'd come out of the big corporate world. I thought I was Jimmy, big whatnots. Um, but I quickly came down to earth and had to understand how to sell, how to market, and so on. Um, but I think starting a business has its place in the right sector. However, compared to buying a business, well, buying a business you get going straight away. A lot of this stuff is pretty obvious, but it's worth repeating. Repetition is something that most of us need, certainly I do, to really drive home and understand what's going on. So you buy a business, you've got an existing customer base, you've got an existing supplier base, you've got already a product that's been tested. You've already passed that early stage to actually find out whether or not there really is a demand for the product or the service. Many people starting out going back to the startup, many people do things thinking that, oh, there's going to be a great market for it without doing enough research, without really understanding all of what they're doing. And certainly I was like that in the beginning. Um, and at least when you buy a business, the concept is tested, is tried and tested, and you know it's working because you've got customers. Um, so everything is there pre-framed for you to come in and take over. Now, the downside is many of the people selling businesses are asking too much. We believe in the current market, you've got about a third of when we value a business, and my team does that, when you value a business, about a third of the businesses for sale out there, and there are thousands of businesses for sale in the UK, in the United States, in Spain, in Europe. There's that whole generation of baby boomers of my generation who are looking to sell. Indeed, I'm selling some assets as well. So the downside is many of those people. Well, sorry, I was just saying, commenting that a third of the market out there for sale is often within 10% more or even less than our valuations that my team does. And then there's another third, which is about 20 to 30% valuing more than our valuation. But normally we find that we can negotiate around that sort of reasonable pricing. And then there's a final third, which I call away with the fairies. They're asking far too much. They're expecting it all to be paid in cash, and it's an unrealistic proposition. They're unlikely to get that. So, as I've said many times before, we put in an offer, we wish them the best and goodbye, and guess what? They often come back to us at some point. So that's the state of the market. And so one downside of buying a business is that you need to be aware of the overpriced business, and you need to be able to negotiate well around that to make sure that you're paying a decent price. And the financing of it, of course, we always focus on the assets of the business to generate the funds for the purchase. Yeah. But my honest feeling is I wouldn't completely ignore a startup if the opportunity presents itself. But beware, make sure you've done enough research to make sure that the concept is true for the product or the service. And like I said, many people really don't do that. And on buying a ready-made business, really, I've done this several times, buying a small business, then developed it in the drinks industry, in the tech industry. And that's personally my favorite course to avoid all the initial pain and difficulties of really getting something going. So as a business gets bigger and bigger, you enter into a completely different stratosphere of opportunity. As the business gets bigger, there are other businesses that want to do business with you. There are other people that want to liaise with you, take your advice, and so on and so forth. So the more you can build a bigger business, the more interesting it becomes for you. Okay, so Martin Godfrey Lahido, many thanks. Acquisitionassist.com. If you want more information, do get on there. And yeah, we'll be happy to speak to you. Thank you.